Sikorsky just turned America's most prolific military helicopter, the Blackhawk, into a fully unmanned drone aircraft, and it might just be a glimpse into the future of military aviation. Now, this new drone helicopter, dubbed the S-70UAS U-HAWK, has had its cockpit and crew stations completely ripped out in favor of a new clamshell and ramp-actuated door setup, turning the entire helicopter into an autonomous cargo drone capable of hauling up to 9,000 pounds of equipment to the front, of covering more than 1,800 miles without refueling, or of loitering overhead for drone defense operations for as long as 14 hours at a time. Now, this uncrewed helicopter is operated via a simple tablet interface, allowing troops with minimal training to employ it for resupply missions at the front. But just as importantly, the U-HAWK is designed to carry and launch literally dozens of short to medium range air-launched drones and cruise missiles, making it a 65-foot drone mothership that covers ground faster than an F1 race car. But as handy as these capabilities are, the real reason I think the U-HAWK is such a winning concept isn't just about Sikorsky's advanced matrix autonomy hardware that's stuffed inside, but just as importantly, the nearly 50 years of Blackhawk operations that it builds off of, making for the addition of truly cutting-edge combat capabilities and a battle-proven platform that already has logistics, training curriculum, combat doctrine, and support infrastructure in place all around the world. Put simply, the U-HAWK is one of my favorite types of game-changing defense tech programs. A realistic one. So let's talk about why. I'm Alex Hollings, and this is Air Power. So I realize that I've been sort of MIA for the past few weeks, but I promise it was for the best of reasons. First, I was invited to speak at NATO's Joint Air and Space Power Conference in Essen, Germany this year, about how emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, hypersonic weapons, and drones are changing combat tactics all over the world. And it was an absolutely amazing experience, getting to interact directly with senior defense officials from all around the NATO alliance and finding out that a fair number of them actually watch our videos. I even got to participate in a panel discussion about air power technology alongside folks like Colonel John Cummings, who's in charge of the Air Force's efforts to integrate AI-piloted drone fighters like the YFQ-42 and YFQ-44 into America's air power apparatus. And being held in a similar esteem to these other presenters, folks like Dr. Justin Bronk from RUSI, or Oracle Senior Intelligence Advisor and former Air Vice Marshal Mike Hart, Professor Peter Lee from the University of Portsmouth, and the Deputy Director of Defense Research for the RAND Corporation, James Black. Well, it all left me with some pretty incredible imposter syndrome, but our conversations were so engaging, and the people running the event were so kind that I pretty quickly lost sight of my insecurities in favor of just basking in the information overload that the week provided. And I absolutely have to thank Colonel Vito Krakas, the Assistant Director of NATO's Joint Air Power Competency Center, for including me in this conference. And, of course, my good friend Leon, a staff sergeant in the German Air Force, who took me shopping for clothes when it became apparent that my luggage was not going to show up. But after talking at NATO's conference, I spent the next week in Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area with the rest of the Sandboxx team, pitching our ideas for the future of our military-centric organization and taking some time out between meetings to do some stuff like, going for a spin in an L-39 jet trainer with a couple of former F-14 Tomcat guys. And now I know just how tough pulling G's really can be. But now I'm back in the office, and I'm back on the clock, and I am eager to make up for lost time. So let's run down Lockheed Martin and Sikorsky's recent unveiling of the S-70UAS U-HAWK. Now, that designation might be a bit confusing to some because most of us know the Blackhawk as one of several UH-60 or Utility Helicopter 60 designations, or maybe the Special Operations MH-60 variants, the Navy's SH-60 Seahawks, or the Air Force's HH-60 Pavehawks. But all of these are iterations of the original H-60 series helicopter design, which is sold on the civilian market as the S-70, hence that S-70UAS designation, with UAS, of course, short for Uncrewed Aerial System. Now, the U-HAWK concept has, so far, been an internally funded effort from Sikorsky and its Lockheed Martin parentage, and that certainly falls within Lockheed's broader focus on advanced uncrewed systems as of late. But America's H-60 Blackhawk helicopter has, well, it's been a staple of military operations all around the world for about a half-century now, with more than 5,000 of these tough and reliable rotorcraft produced by Sikorsky, as I mentioned, now a Lockheed Martin subsidiary, and then delivered to some 36 separate nations. These helicopters are so broadly capable that they're used for combat assault, cargo lift, combat search and rescue, medevac, firefighting, command and control, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, and even VIP support operations. And despite first taking to the skies in 1974, these helicopters have seen some very serious upgrades over the years, with today's UH-60Ms powered by more modern 3,910 shaft horsepower T700 GE701D engines spinning new wide-chord main rotor blades that provide more speed, more lifting power, and more range than previous Blackhawk iterations. In fact, that redesigned rotor blade setup alone is said to produce an additional 470 pounds of lift all by itself. The Blackhawk's ability to eat small arms fire while remaining airborne, its ability to quickly ferry troops and equipment into and out of the fight, and its sheer reliability with a roughly consistent 85% readiness rate reported across combat environments the world over, has all made the H-60 series of helicopters, hands down, the most heavily relied upon rotorcraft in the entire US military, and maybe even the world. But the times, they are a-changing, and the Blackhawk's biggest operator, the US Army, is already looking to transition to a newer, faster, and longer-ranged troop carrier in the forthcoming tilt-rotor V-280 Valor, which is now known within the Army as the MV-75. Other helicopter programs, like the U.S. Army's Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft, or the FARA effort, which aimed to finally field a replacement for the OH-58 Scout helicopter, have been canceled in favor of using a wider variety of smaller and much cheaper drones. But having a replacement in the works doesn't mean the Blackhawk is on its way out just yet, and not every problem can be solved with quadcopters. As long as wars are being fought, there will always be a need to get larger payloads to the front than the smaller logistics drones being fielded today could muster. And that is a big part of why the H-60 has become such a vital element of America's power projection capabilities. Today, the U.S. military operates around 2,276 H-60 series helicopters, each of which can carry up to 12 troops in full kit, plus at least 2 crew members, depending on which of several internal layouts your helicopter comes with. These helicopters can reach speeds as high as 222 miles per hour, but they tend to cruise at closer to 175 at altitudes as high as 19,000 feet, and that is about 100 miles per hour faster and 6,400 feet higher than the legendary Huey, or the UH-1 Iroquois that the Blackhawk replaced. Now, this helicopter can climb at a rate of 1,646 feet per minute, and that is about 3 stories per second. The standard Blackhawk is rated to carry around 2,600 pounds internally, but the U-HAWK drone increases that to 7,000, and both versions can carry 9,000 pounds under sling, meaning these helicopters can deliver 105mm howitzers or even up-armored Humvees. And aside from the two door gunner positions, each of which is capable of carrying M240 machine guns, M134 miniguns, or GAU-19 Gatling guns, the Blackhawk can also be equipped with stub wings, called the External Stores Support System, which can carry additional fuel tanks or a variety of missiles, rockets, or gun pods. That right around $15 million a piece, depending on your variant, and a system lifespan that was recently extended from 20 to 25 years, you'd be pretty hard-pressed to find a more practical, broadly capable, or cost-effective platform in any of Uncle Sam's hangars. In fact, if you look at the Government Accountability Office's Weapon System Sustainment report, you'll find the operating and sustainment costs of the Army's Blackhawks are so low that they barely show up on the graph. Though, admittedly, more specialized variants like the Navy's MH-60s are a bit costlier to run. And while the MV-75 is expected to eventually replace these workhorse helicopters starting in the 2030s, the Army still intends to keep buying new Blackhawks by the hundreds through at least 2032, meaning these birds will likely still be flying into the 2050s, if not longer. After all, even if Bell is able to pump out, let's say, 100 MV-75s a year once production starts, it'd still take nearly 14 years to replace just the 1,375 UH-60Ms operated by the Army today. And, of course, literally dozens of other nations also operate these helicopters, including NATO allies like Poland and Turkey and Sweden, Pacific allies like Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, and Middle Eastern partners like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. And all that means these broadly capable rotorcraft have a huge maintenance and sustainment infrastructure that's taken decades to build and is already in place all around the globe. And that might just be the secret sauce that makes the U-HAWK such a good idea. Now, last year, China made headlines around the world by carrying the largest payload ever with a cargo drone at 3.2 metric tons, or just shy of 7,055 pounds, with their fixed-wing SA-70U, which was touted at the time as a revolution in logistics. The U-HAWK can carry about that same amount of weight internally, but can carry nearly 2,000 pounds more externally, all with existing support infrastructure and maintainers already positioned all around the world to support operations. Now, at last year's AUSA, I got the chance to hang out with some of the guys from the Lockheed Martin and Sikorsky Matrix Autonomy Technology team. And while we stood there in Washington, D.C., they showed me how they could control a very real Blackhawk flying in the very real sky over Virginia with nothing more than a tablet that they brought with them in a briefcase. I watched as they just clicked on a point on the map and then saw footage captured from the helicopter, which did have a pilot in it just in case of emergency, as it actually flew itself to the point that they identified. Now, at the time, this was still a pretty new and experimental concept that required modifying the Blackhawk in question to incorporate fly-by-wire control, which the rotorcraft lacks otherwise. But the Sikorsky team did tell me that the Matrix autonomy software used in conjunction with that modification was actually platform agnostic, meaning it could be used to control just about any aircraft, just as long as it's got a fly-by-wire control system that the Matrix technology can be connected to. Now, it turns out that Lockheed and Sikorsky spent the last 10 months tearing the Blackhawk design down to convert it into the U-HAWK, based on the success of that modified Blackhawk and, according to the team, conversations that they had with defense leaders during that same AUSA event. Now, according to Lockheed Martin's press materials, the conventional flight controls in the Blackhawk were removed and replaced with what they described as a third-generation low-cost fly-by-wire system integrated with Matrix autonomy technology. And in this context, that third-generation fly-by-wire moniker probably references the first-generation DARPA-led ALIAS, or Aircrew Labor and Cockpit Automation System effort that started flying back in 2019 and culminated with a testbed Blackhawk completing 3 autonomous cargo and medevac mission exercises without a pilot on board in November of 2022. The second generation then probably references that optionally piloted Blackhawk, or OPBH, that I saw demonstrated at AUSA last year. And now, the third generation fly-by-wire system goes even further, with the pilot no longer considered optional, but instead unnecessary. Now, making the Blackhawk into the U-HAWK also allowed Sikorsky's team, of course, to rip out the 4 standard crew stations from the front of the helicopter, which not only provided room for a large and useful clamshell and ramp-actuated door, but simultaneously increased the internal space for cargo storage by a whopping 25%. And replacing the crew with cargo space could be a very big deal, because cargo limitations aren't just about weight, they're also about volume, or having enough space to carry larger stuff, like increasingly important for the Pacific anti-ship missiles. Think of it like stuffing a new TV into the trunk of your car. It's not just about how much weight your car can carry, but also whether or not you can fit that TV into your trunk and still get it closed. In a lot of ways, the U-HAWK does function just like a smaller logistics drone, ferrying ordnance, equipment, medical supplies, and more to austere environments. It just happens to be almost 65 feet long, with a maximum takeoff weight of 22,000 pounds. Now, the U.S. is currently fielding a variety of new air and surface-launched missile systems meant to allow the U.S. Army and Marine Corps to hold Chinese warships at risk in the Pacific. Weapons like the Norwegian-sourced and very capable Naval Strike Missile are almost 11.5 feet long, or about 3.5 meters, and are just too big to cram into a crude Blackhawk for delivery to coastal defense troops. But a U-HAWK, with its crew seats removed, can carry 2 of them. A standard Blackhawk can carry 2 joint modular intermodal containers, which are standard-sized U.S. military shipping crates meant for easy storage and transfer from one mode of transportation to another. Now, these containers come pre-packed from logistics hubs, with anything from MREs and ammunition for infantry troops to austere aircraft maintenance and repair kits with tools and spare parts, or even unique special operations equipment loadouts for unusual mission sets. Now, the extra space provided in the U-HAWK doubles the number of these containers the helicopter can deliver from 2 to 4. Now, that means having enough food or ammo to stay in the fight for maybe twice as long, or getting medical supplies for twice as many injured troops, and you see where I'm going from here. But that's far from all. According to Sikorsky, the U-HAWK can deliver a HIMARS pod of 6 rockets. It can deploy uncrewed ground vehicles, launch air-launched effects, and can incorporate additional internal fuel storage to allow for a maximum range of an incredible 1,600 nautical miles. That's about 1,841 regular miles, or around 2,963 kilometers for the non-pirates among us. Now, they also say this added fuel storage can allow the U-HAWK to loiter over a target area for up to 14 hours without refueling, which could be very handy as a counter-drone defensive asset or in ISR operations. And talking about deploying ground vehicles, the inclusion of the HDT Hunter Wolf, short for Wheeled Offload Logistics Follower, in Lockheed's press materials and at Lockheed's AUSA display, is a pretty interesting thing to note, because the platform itself has no public ties to the mega firm Lockheed Martin or any of its subsidiaries. But its manufacturer, HDT, was awarded $11.55 million in November of last year to deliver this rugged 6-wheeled unmanned ground system to the U.S. Army for testing and evaluation, as a part of their Small Multi-Purpose Equipment Transport Increment 2 program. Now, the Hunter Wolf is powered by a diesel-electric hybrid powertrain that includes a 20-kilowatt capacity generator that not only allows for silent battery-powered operations when necessary, but can also provide up to 15 kilowatts of power externally to charge other equipment. In standard trim, the vehicle is said to keep pace with infantry troops on the ground while carrying up to 2,200 pounds, or about 1,000 kilograms of gear, and covering up to 200 miles, right around 300 kilometers, with its internal supply of JP-8 or diesel, along with its batteries. Now, long-range fuel tanks can also be added to extend the Wolf's reach out to more than 600 miles, or better than 1,000 kilometers, which can also extend its operational time from 120 hours to north of 320. Now, this system is designed for fully autonomous operations or simple follow-me directions from troops on the ground. It can carry dual stretchers to evacuate wounded troops. It can be equipped with a backhoe or loader kit, or a flail and mine roller kit to clear the path for troops following behind it. According to its manufacturer, it can ford up to 24 inches of water and cover ground at around 12 miles per hour, or about twice as fast as the average person can run, even on narrow and uneven terrain. And the Hunter Wolf even has a remote weapon station that's designed to mount an M240 Bravo machine gun, or an M134 six-barrel Gatling gun, an M2 50 cal, or even Northrop Grumman's specialized M230 Bushmaster chain gun-based counter-drone system called the XM914, which we have a video on if you want to learn more about. To put it simply, the Hunter Wolf is a utilitarian ground combat drone designed for both logistics and direct combat support, and the ability to quickly deploy these sorts of assets from autonomous helicopters could be a boon for ground pounders everywhere. And while the Hunter Wolf has yet to prove that it can do all the things that HDT promises, it does offer Lockheed Martin and Sikorsky the chance to plant that idea that these drone copters can be used to deploy autonomous ground combat drones, as well as providing support to the bags of meat in uniform who are ultimately calling the shots in the fight. But the U-HAWK isn't just about logistics. The platform has been optimized for what the Army has taken to calling quivers of air-launched effects, or ALEs. Now, air-launched effects is sort of a catch-all term for a wide variety of short, medium, and long-ranged air-launched drones and cruise missiles, some of which carry intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance hardware. Others carry electronic warfare suites and jammers, and of course, others could carry explosive or kinetic payloads. According to Sikorsky's Advanced Programs Business Development Director, Ramsey Bentley, the U-HAWK can carry quivers of between 24 and 50 short to medium range ALEs, with larger long range systems likely to be launched from under the U-HAWK's stub wings instead. Now that means a single U-HAWK could deploy literally dozens of drone decoys, jammers, and cruise missiles at targets currently more than 217 miles away. That's about 350 kilometers, and there are already plans in place to stretch the ALE system's reach out to more than 400 miles, or about 650 kilometers, with at least an hour of loiter time in the not-too-distant future. And in keeping with the ability to launch various sorts of weapons, Sikorsky has also said the U-HAWK could make for a very effective counter-drone asset, hunting down and destroying inbound drones semi-autonomously while loitering over an area for hours on end. And just like the Blackhawk I saw Sikorsky flying from DC last year, the U-HAWK is operated entirely by tablet, with an operator giving it simple commands and the Matrix autonomy systems doing the rest of the hard work. Now this means U-HAWK operators need no flight training or expertise in order to leverage the U-HAWK in a fight. And if you ask me, this is a brilliant approach to incorporating newly emerging AI flight technologies into America's existing force structure as it exists today. When people hear about new warfighting technologies coming online, they tend to think that it should be able to get into the fight as soon as it starts rolling off the assembly line. But in reality, big technological changes take a lot of time and money to roll out. You need to have techs and maintainers trained to support the new system in place. They need specialized tools and equipment to use for that maintenance and support. They need a training curriculum to get new personnel spun up and logistics set up to keep the new tech in good working order. Replacing literally thousands of Blackhawks will take years, or more likely decades, and that means these helicopters are going to be around for a long time to come. So transitioning to a partially autonomous Blackhawk fleet would allow branches of the US military to continue to employ the same techs and maintainers, the same specialized equipment, the same facilities, much of the same training and educational curriculum, and the same logistical footprint, all while significantly reducing the costs of operating these helicopters and the risk to American pilots and crew members in the fight. And while talking about this stuff isn't always as sexy as talking about entirely new airframes jam-packed with entirely new capabilities, it is important to remember that even America's massive defense expenditures have real limits, especially in this era of renewed great power competition that's seeing so many of the platforms America's been relying on for decades being replaced by newer, more modern, and often more expensive systems. Finding new uses for existing infrastructure or platforms that can be seamlessly integrated into a broader force-wide modernization effort is probably one of the most important things the defense apparatus can be doing right now. And to be clear, it absolutely has, with new low-cost drone interceptors like the APKWS-2 coming into service just recently, the Navy's SM-6 missiles being adopted by the Army for ground-based Typhoon launchers, the Air Force Research Lab's quick-sync systems being added to JDAMs, and AIM-9X Sidewinder air-to-air missiles being strapped to drone boats and ground-based air defense platforms to bring down enemy aircraft. These novel uses for existing weapon stockpiles, equipment, and infrastructure allows the U.S. to keep pace with the threat environment today, while new, more specialized systems come online and eventually make their way out to the fleet. And this is vital, because war has a nasty habit of coming on when your opponent believes you're least prepared. And that means defense acquisitions always have to balance the ability to prepare for tomorrow against the ability to fight today. And concepts like the S-70UAS U-HAWK are well positioned to help maintain that balance, while still providing an important stepping stone toward the future of combat aviation. But whether or not the Pentagon actually agrees with me is something else entirely. Lockheed Martin and Sikorsky are currently aiming for the U-HAWK's first test flight to happen in 2026, so I'd imagine we'll probably revisit this concept right around then. And with that, ends yet another edition of Air Power from Sandboxx News. I'm Alex Hollings. Make sure to swing by sandboxnews.com today and every day for all the latest in news, entertainment, and now merch from all around the force. If you got anything out of today's video, make sure to click like and subscribe down below, and make sure to leave me a comment so I know what I should cover next. And of course, don't forget to tap on that bell icon so you never miss a drop from Sandboxx News.